I promised that there would be no carbon tax. That's true, and I've walked away from that commitment, and I'm not going to try and pretend anything else. We're going to get there via a temporary carbon tax.
And there is no point in imposing a carbon price domestically which results in emissions and production transferring internationally for no environmental gain.
Prime Minister, no mention today or tonight, as a matter of fact, about the carbon tax. Have you decided that's going to cost you votes? Is that why it's on the shelf?
There will be no carbon tax under the government I lead. And leading our national debate to reach a consensus about putting a cap on carbon pollution. There will be no carbon tax under the government I lead, and leading our national debate to reach a consensus about putting a cap on carbon pollution.
Certainly what we rejected is this hysterical allegation that somehow that we are moving towards a carbon tax from the Liberal and their advertising. We certainly reject that.
It's another major backflip from Labor, having promised to return to surplus hundreds, if not thousands, of times.
Back in surplus in 2012-13.
The surplus in 2012-13.
Surplus in 2012-13, exactly as promised.
As promised.
As promised.
Now the promised surplus is gone.
Dramatically lower tax revenue now makes it unlikely that there will be a surplus in 2012-13.
Election 2010, Australia Decides, starts right now as we join Carl and Lisa live in the Canberra Tally Room.
Hello everyone and welcome to our non-stop coverage of election 2010 from the tally room right here in Canberra. It is shaping as the tightest election in decades.
Sure is.
They're calling it Independence Day. Facing the National Press Club live, Tony Windsor, Rob Oakeshott and Bob Catter, the three independents that will decide who forms government. Our future in their hands. Live from 12:30 on Sky News.
There will be no carbon tax under the government I lead. To reach a consensus about putting a cap on carbon pollution.
Why did you lie to us?
Right, well, I can talk to you
And
about
why are you continuing to lie and say, well, you know, I didn't really mean to lie?
Well, I can explain all of that to you.
I've listened to you for months. I've watched Parliament.
Yeah.
You're still lying.
Well, I can give you an answer right now if you'll let me.
You said there will be no carbon tax under my government.
Absolutely, I did say that. I talked in the election campaign about putting a cap on carbon pollution, an emissions trading scheme. To reach a consensus about putting a cap on carbon pollution. We're going to get there via a temporary carbon tax. Temporary carbon tax. Temporary carbon tax. There will be no carbon tax under the government I lead. I did talk in the election campaign about the need to put a price on carbon. We're going to get there via a temporary carbon tax. There will be no carbon tax under the government I lead. We're going to get there via a temporary carbon tax. Prime Minister, on the eve of the last election, you said there'd be no carbon tax. Were you wrong to say that? And what's changed your mind? The Australian people voted for this parliament, and this parliament gives us an opportunity to price carbon. I promised that there would be no carbon tax. That's true, and I've walked away from that commitment, and I'm not going to try and pretend anything else. An opportunity to price carbon. I want to talk to you tonight about why the government is putting a price on carbon. There will be no carbon tax under the government I lead. I promised that there would be no carbon tax. That's true, and I've walked away from that commitment, and I'm not going to try and pretend anything else. We're going to get there via a temporary carbon tax.
Your tax and the $10 billion clean energy fund that you've got are meant to cut emissions by 5% by 2020. By how much will the world's temperature change as a consequence of Australia's sacrifice?
Well, what we know, Andrew, is that together with the world, we can make a difference.
All right, what is the difference? What is our part of that difference? It's a huge investment. The ambition is to stop the world from heating. What is Australia's contribution in terms of temperature?
You know that you can't do that sort of calculation.
You can. I've got experts.
You can't, Andrew.
Yes, you can.
That's the same
Professor
as saying...
Roger Jones of the Intergovernment Panel on Climate Change estimates it, and this is the most generous estimate I've seen, as about 4 1,000ths of a degree. Would you disagree with the IPCC on this? So you're never in cabinet when voting for this said, excuse me, Prime Minister, by how much difference, what's the difference will this make actually to the world's temperature? You never asked that question.
I'll tell you what we do in cabinet.
Did you ever ask that question?
I'll tell you what we do in cabinet.
No, but did you ever ask that question?
What we do, but that's a nonsense question.
It's not a nonsense.
That's
the whole thing is to stop the world from rising in temperature. you need a consequence for the sacrifice you're trying to ask Australians to do. You've got no idea. So I'm asking you, you have got no idea, have you?
We know.
As an architect of this plan,
Andrew,
what the cut in the world's temperature will be. You don't know.
Andrew, what we do know, Andrew, is that if the whole world acts... The whole world together will act.
You do believe that the world is warming as a result of our gases. If we cut our gases, how much will it stop?
Andrew, you know that that's a nonsense question.
It's not.
The question isn't that.
It's exactly the question.
The question isn't that.
Pay this tax and you'll stop the world from warming. Well, how much will it make a difference?
Andrew, that's the wrong question, with due respect.
It's the
question
exact
is...
question.
Julia Gillard and her climate change minister celebrate, then receive congratulations as the carbon tax moves one step closer to becoming law, passing through the lower house this morning. The Prime Minister even got a kiss from Kevin Rudd, much to the opposition's delight.